Welcome to today's Explainer. So if you're a manager trying to steer your team right now, or maybe a management student figuring out how to build one in the future, you probably spend a lot of time thinking about metrics. You know the drill: KPIs, dashboards, hitting those targets. We're pretty much taught that numbers represent this ultimate objective truth. But what if our fundamental approach to measuring a team's success is just deeply flawed? What if the exact metrics we're using to drive performance are actually destroying it? Today, we're unpacking some honestly fascinating research from Baron van der Kolk that completely challenged how I look at performance measurement. And for sure, it might just make you look at your own spreadsheets in a totally different light.
Okay, let's dive into this with a story that honestly sounds like a massive organizational win. Check out these numbers. Between 2012 and 2018, home burglaries in the Netherlands spectacularly dropped from almost 92,000 down to just under 43,000. I mean, that is a more than 50% reduction in just 6 years. Naturally, the responsible Dutch minister was out there publicly celebrating, proudly pointing to the police's incredible efforts. As managers, this is literally the exact kind of trend line we dream of showing our stakeholders, right? The numbers were super convincing. And hey, after all, numbers speak for themselves.
Or do they? Because here is the twist. A collective of investigative journalists decided to actually scrutinize the making of these specific crime figures, and what they found was, well, pretty shocking. It turns out, high-impact crimes were being used as the key indicator to measure the performance of these police units. Because eager superiors were putting a ton of pressure on their subordinates to hit these specific targets, units actually began manipulating the data. Like, for example, if a burglar broke a window, searched a home, but didn't actually steal anything, the police would just downgrade it. They classified it merely as destruction, which is a low-impact crime, instead of a home burglary, which is high-impact. They didn't solve the crime problem at all. They just creatively recategorized it to hit their KPIs.
So the crucial point is a concept introduced by author Baron van der Kolk called indicatorism. Basically, indicatorism happens when we overly stress the importance of performance measures, and that triggers behavior aimed solely at improving those specific indicators while completely losing sight of our actual organizational goals. Think about it. The police's actual goal was public safety, right? But their indicatorism shifted their entire focus to simply lowering a specific number on a spreadsheet, even if it meant totally distorting reality. As leaders or future leaders, this is the ultimate trap. Metric obsession derails our true purpose.
To really grasp the systemic damage of indicatorism, we need to look at the cascading negative effects of bad data. Van der Kolk breaks down the hidden costs of performance measurement into 3 distinct levels: individual, organizational, and societal. This is an absolutely essential framework for any manager or business student to wrap their head around. We often think of bad metrics as just, a minor administrative glitch, but they actually act kind of like a virus. They impact the mental health of our employees, the operational integrity of our companies, and ultimately, the environment and society we operate in. Let's break these columns down.
Starting with the individual costs. When we use these heavily quantified, incentive-oriented performance measures, it frequently comes at the direct expense of our team's well-being. Quantified metrics simply cannot do justice to the true value and the nuanced contributions of an actual human being. When people feel reduced to just a single number, it triggers real feelings of injustice, stress, fear, and alienation. And even worse, the omnipresence of this quantified data, whether we're talking about citations, sales targets, or literally even online likes, it forces us into this never-ending global race. It turns employees into what van der Kolk calls constantly competing achievement subjects, obsessively striving to overtake others, but at the direct expense of their own mental health and collaborative spirit.
Moving up to the organizational level, indicatorism breeds toxic operational habits, like short-termism and the outright manipulation of numbers we just saw with the Dutch police. But it also leads to severe goal displacement. Just consider this real-world field study van der Kolk shares. There were front office workers being measured on the indicator average time spent per client. Makes sense, right? Well, to improve this metric, workers began actively prioritizing easy clients and deliberately dodging difficult ones. Specifically, they ignored clients with foreign-sounding names who might take slightly longer to process. So, a simple time management metric inadvertently incentivized discriminatory behavior and completely shattered the organization's actual goal of providing equal customer service. Wild, right?
And this brilliantly illustrates the societal costs on our third pillar. At a macro level, focusing on one-dimensional indicators creates massive, dangerous blind spots. When we measure corporate environmental performance solely through the lens of carbon dioxide emissions, we falsely suggest that highly complex natural phenomena are just simple trade-offs. The mechanism that highlights CO2 completely renders other crucial, unmeasured environmental qualities, like biodiversity, virtually invisible. It tricks executives into thinking they can just swap some trees for a corporate flight, completely ignoring the vastly complex and interconnected stakeholder interests of our real world.
Section 2, the Manager's Toolkit. We're going over 5 tips for better measurement.
Let's move to and see how this builds into van der Kolk's 5 actionable steps to tackle this issue. Think of this as the absolute perfect checklist to take into your next team meeting. We've got co-creating systems, keeping the goal in mind, using qualitative data, allowing subjectivity, and starting a conversation. Each of these steps is designed to humanize the data and reconnect your metrics back to reality, ensuring they actually serve your organization rather than control it. Let's look at how to apply these in practice.
For tips 1 and 2, it all starts with co-creation. Don't just hand down metrics from the C-suite like a mandate. Design them with the stakeholders who are actually going to be impacted by them. Research shows this drastically enhances employee commitment to the targets. Second, always keep the overarching goal in mind to tackle indicatorism. Actually, scratch that. If a metric thwarts your real goal, you must adjust or abandon it immediately. It's that serious. For instance, if a university wants to teach critical thinking, but professors are dumbing down their courses just to boost their numerical teaching evaluations, the measurement system is actively destroying the institutional goal.
Now, tips 3 and 4 are all about adding color to the black and white data. Raw numbers are honestly utterly devoid of context without qualitative information. You have to complement your spreadsheets with human stories, interviews, and detailed reflections to actually meaningfully interpret what those numbers are saying. Furthermore, provide your managers with flexibility. I know, it might sound totally counterintuitive to the data obsessed out there, but injecting a limited amount of subjectivity into performance evaluations actually mitigates the rigid, unfair shortcomings of strict measurement systems. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the 5th tip, which is perhaps the most transformative mindset shift for any manager. Never treat a performance indicator as the final judgment, like the end of a conversation. It should always be the beginning of one. When a performance metric is used simply as a springboard to start a dialogue about what truly matters, the results are incredible. Studies show that this kind of dialogue leads employees to cooperate across department boundaries, learn from their peers, and drive genuine, holistic organizational improvement. Which brings us to this incredibly powerful conclusion from Baron van der Kolk. Numbers cannot speak for themselves, and therefore we need to speak for them more often. As current and future leaders, it's really our responsibility to dismantle this blind faith in raw data. A dashboard is never, ever going to capture the full reality of your team's hard work, the nuanced challenges they face every single day, or the complex societal impact of your organization. We have to become the context. We have to be the ones advocating for the human reality behind the metrics.
So I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge. Look at the key performance indicators you're tracking this week. Are they turning your team into stressed-out achievement subjects? Are they inadvertently incentivizing the exact wrong behaviors? Please, don't let the numbers have the final word. What conversation will your metrics start today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the data, keep focusing on your true goals, and I'll catch you next time.